Hello, thanks for clicking on the video. This video, I'm going to talk about the changes that I am making to my website and to the courses that I offer. Currently, I only offer two courses, the ICD-10 CM and ICD-10 PCS as one course and CPT as the other course. And I did that because I was focused on gearing everybody towards completing their or obtaining their CCS certification through AHEMA. And that's the only exam that tests on all three major code sets. But what I have been finding out is that most people, after they finish the ICD-10, CM, and PCS course, they want to take a break because these courses are intense. You have to put in the work. We cover a lot of material, and they are tired. But that is not the way to go. You don't want to take a break because you only regress when you don't use it. So what I have decided I'm going to do is I'm going to break up my courses. And I'm also going to start promoting a new way for nurses to transition into coding because it does, if you take a course and don't ever sit for a credential, you have really wasted your money. And that's not why I started my channel. I started my channel to help people get into coding, and I started teaching nurses coding because I want you to eventually get a credential. And when I mean eventually, like shortly after we finish the courses, not for you to take months off and then start again because you will always regress. And that's not the intention. So what I have decided to do is I have decided to break up my courses. What I'm going to do now, every course that I offer, so ICD-10 CM is not going to be paired with PCS anymore. They're going to become two separate courses. The CPT will remain the same. And what I'm going to do in this video is explain how you can get into coding, and you will basically pick what area you want to go into. If you want to go into, I'm going to start with the ICD-10 CM. There are two credentials that you can get with just based on the ICD-10 CM code set. Those two credentials are, you can become a certified risk adjustment coder, and that's the CRC through AAPC, or you can become a home health coder, and you will be eligible to sit for your HCS-D through the AHCC. But you can go to, if you go to decisionhealth.com, they have, and you click on coding, they have information on the HCS-D. And for a lot of RNs, that really would be a good look because because I started doing some research, and actually who really helped me with that is I had a home care nurse in my ICD-10 CM class, and she was like, I decided that I don't really want to do CPT. I want to just, I think I want to stay in home care, and I'm thinking about getting my HCS-D. So I'm like, okay. So I looked into it, and we talked about it, and I started looking for opportunities. So if you are a registered nurse and you get your HCS-D credential, they do have remote positions, and some positions will even give you, if you're a registered nurse, 3 months to get your OASIS certification. Because ultimately, in home health, you will code the start of cares. You'll also code OASIS, because I think now, if I'm not, from what I read, OASIS is done monthly, where before it used to be done every 60 days, but now it's done every 30 days. And I also believe that you have to, I don't know how often they do their coding, but I know that OASIS is done every 30 days, and I would think maybe their coding would be too, because they kind of go hand in hand with the assessments that the clinicians and that the nurses make when they go on their visits. Now, you don't have to be a nurse to become a home health coder, but as I always say with all of my coding videos, it does help, and it definitely helps if you are a registered nurse. So, and if you are an LPN, you want to get into home health coding, you would have to have your HCS-D and your HCSO, which is the OASIS certification. I haven't seen many positions that will give anybody other than RNs 90 days to get their HCSO after being hired, which is great because then that gives you 3 months of like hands-on experience. So that would definitely ensure your success for the exam. So the two credentials are the HCS-D and the CRC. Now, both of them are they're both based off of the ICD-10-CM code set, but they are very different. And the differences are not very major. It's just that for risk adjustment, I'll just tell you briefly because I don't want this video to be too long. But briefly, when you do risk adjustment is not based off of sequencing. Risk adjustment is based off of certain conditions that CMS, that's the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, have deemed that are risk adjustable and they pay. And basically, the number of however many conditions a person has that map to a risk adjustment category, that increases their risk adjustment factor, which basically means that it increases the amount of money their insurance company would receive for them monthly to take care of them. And they're all based off of strictly ICD-10-CM codes, and there's no sequencing because it's all based off of a hierarchy. So even though you have to learn sequencing when you learn ICD-10-CM, you learn sequencing. It's not necessary in risk adjustment. You just have to know, and they have actually CMS makes it very easy for you to learn which codes risk adjust because they have an Excel spreadsheet that you can download off of their website for free, and you can just punch in the codes and it'll tell you, it'll pop up. If it pops up, then that means that it risk adjusts, and it'll tell you which category it maps to and which years. So it's really, really great. It's really, really easy to learn. The hardest part, well, the most difficult part is just learning ICD-10-CM and learning the guidelines. But for risk adjustment, once again, it's not based off of sequencing, but it is based off of proper coding and knowing coding guidelines and knowing which combination codes to use in some of the key body systems like the endocrine, cardiovascular system, those type. Then now for the HCS-D. For the HCS-D, that's strictly for home health. And home health, because what I've decided to do is, since I want to offer a class to ultimately help someone sit for that credential, I'm going to obtain my HCS-D. I want to schedule my exam next month. I just got my study material just like Thursday, when I got my last shipment. So what I have been able to determine so far is that is based off of sequencing, but it is also, they use a lot of aftercare codes, whereas in regular coding, you don't use a lot of aftercare codes because because you're usually in either outpatient or acute care, so you don't deal with after codes. But in home health, you have a lot of after codes, and you still it's based off of sequencing, and you have to know the coding guidelines in both credentials, the CRC and the HCS-D. You have to know coding guidelines. Like, that's key to any kind of proper coding for diseases. You have to know the coding guidelines, and you have to know causal relationships, which I teach. So that would be the quickest, and I would say the easiest, because it's only one code set. Now, if you wanted to work outpatient, you could take the ICD-10-CM course that I offer, and then you can take the CPT course that I offer. Then you would be eligible to sit for either your CPC or for your CCS-P credential. Now, what I tell everybody, and a lot of people are not aware of this, but if you sit for your CPC and you have less than 2 years of coding experience that you can document, you're still eligible to sit for the exam. But if you cannot verify 2 years of active coding, you will get your CPC certification, but you'll get a CPCA, which is the Apprentice Status. I don't recommend that, because in my opinion, the Apprentice Status is like the scarlet letter, because you're saying to the industry and you're saying to every employer that I don't have 2 years of coding experience, which that translates into, if they hire you, they're going to lowball you because they know, first of all, not many people are going to hire you with an apprentice status on your license, on your certification, and they know that they can pay you less money because you don't have 2 years of experience. As a nurse, I don't recommend any nurse go that route. Now, if you are working somewhere or you know somebody who can write you a letter to say, because you have to send it, you have to submit it to AAPC. People have hookups. If you know somebody who can do it and you can go and get your CPC straight out the box, then go get your, then I recommend you get your CPC. But if you cannot, I recommend that you get your CCS-P through AHIMA. Because like I always say, like I've said in some of my previous videos, as a nurse, you can always sell your clinical experience, and every nurse has chart review experience. If you have been a nurse for 5 years, you have 5 years of chart review experience. If you've been a nurse for 2 years, you have 2 years chart review experience. Nurses are documenting charts every single day. You review medical records every single day. You review labs every single something medical you review every single day you go to work. All of that counts as experience. It might not count as coding experience, but you do have chart review experience. You do have, amazing clinical skills and a lot of clinical knowledge that you can bring to your chart review, which will give you a leg up. So if you get your CCS-P, you don't have to explain that you don't have 2 years of experience. You can sell your other skills to you can sell your other skills to help you get the job. And that's the route that I would recommend. I don't recommend anybody get their CPC until, if you so choose, until after you have 2 years of experience, and then you can go straight to your CPC and you don't have to deal with the CPCA, because it is very, very hard to get a job. And then also you can also see, if you go and put in CPCA, you'll see some jobs will say CCA and CPCA not eligible. So you don't want to study for a credential and then it doesn't really do anything for you. A credential is supposed to help you. It's not supposed to hinder you. And that apprentice status will hinder you. I don't care what anybody says. If somebody tells you that it doesn't work like that, they are telling you a lie. You can tell them I said it. They're lying. You can go on LinkedIn and look at people who have CPCA and CPCA and talk about how they have been looking for a job for over a year. Who wants to study for a credential and then a year later you still can't utilize it? That's craziness. So don't do it. If you want to go the outpatient route as a nurse, get your CCS-P. That's what I did. My first job I got was in risk adjustment. So I learned coding on the job. So they didn't require credentialing, but I got it on my own. I got my CRC. Then when I wanted to get another job, when I wanted to leave them, I knew that I had to get what they call a core credential, which is either a CCS-P, CPC, or a CCS. So I decided to go for the CCS-P. At the time, I was eligible because I had been coding for like 2.5 years with my company, so I could have. But I didn't trust them to. Honestly, I didn't trust them to write me a letter after I got my credential. And if I had been stuck with the CPCA, I would have been very annoyed. So I was like, I'm not even going to leave that up to them. I went and got my CCS-P, and it certainly did not hurt. Then after I got my CCS-P, I got a few other credentials in the meantime. Then I just had to learn PCS, and then I was able to sit for my CCS credential. So if it's going to be easier, I think that's the way people should go. I think that you should, if you after you finish your ICD-10-CM course, if you think that, oh my gosh, I am ready to learn more and I want to go for my CCS-P, great. But if you decide, I still kind of, have to brush up on everything, or I'm not comfortable enough with just ICD-10-CM to move on to learn CPT, then I would recommend that you go and either sit for your CCS, not your CRC or your HCS-D credential. And then from there, once you are more comfortable with the code set, then you can come back and take the CPT course. Or if you want to sit for your CCS, you can take the CPT course and the PCS course. So I just think I want to make it as easy as possible for you to transition, because at the end of the day, you want to learn something so you can utilize it and so you can start something new. There's no point, I'm going to say it again, there is no point in studying and learning a code set or two and then taking a break, because taking a break, we all know what taking a break means. A month turns into 10 months, and then if somebody asks you about a guideline, oh, I used to know that, I'm not really sure. Like, no, 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 no. So that is going to be, my website will probably reflect the changes. Maybe by the end of next week, I have to speak to the person who will update my site and let them, and they'll give me a timeline when they can get it done. But moving forward, the courses are going to be broken down. They're going to be individual. And I have not mentioned HCPCS, because when you take your CPC or your CCS-P, you have to have a HCPCS book. HCPCS is not a major code set. It is not. The three major code sets are ICD-10-CM, ICD-10 PCS, and CPT. HCPCS is more, it's honestly how I would describe it, is like a companion to the CPT code set. So for your exam, you will have to use your HCPCS book if you take an outpatient coding credential, but you use it just to find, like, you'll have to code injections. And if somebody gets an injection, or maybe like an IV question, if somebody gets an injection, you'll have to look in the HCPCS book to get the code for that particular drug. And, that gets coded as well, along with the ICD-10 CM diagnosis, the CPT code, and the HCPCS code. And then there are some HCPCS codes that you would use for like Medicare patients, but it's not anything extensive. And that would be, of course, taught along with the CPT course. So I didn't mention that, but I just wanted you to know that would be bundled in, because HCPCS is like a companion to CPT. So that kind of goes hand in hand. And I will probably just rename it CPT and HCPCS. So that will clear up any kind of confusion. And another thing I want to talk about, so many people will contact me and say that, oh, well, it says you have to have 2 years of coding experience. That's not what it says. Most of these exams, and I think AHIMA changed their language, but for AAPC, for instance, they say that they recommend every coding exam, every coding credential will always recommend 2 years of experience. They'll strongly recommend it, but it's not necessary. And what you also have to understand is, as a nurse, you have way more, you have more experience, you have more clinical knowledge than what any school would teach you if you went just for coding. Because for coding, if you would be, how you would qualify for the exam is you would qualify for the exam by education, because when you go to the website, you have to select how you qualify, and you would select education because as a nurse, LPN or RN, you've had medical terminology, you've had anatomy and physiology, you've had pharmacology, you've had pathophysiology. The only thing you haven't had at that time, well, by that time you will have, but the only thing that nursing school doesn't teach you is reimbursement methodology and the code sets. But that's what you would learn when you take your course with me. You would have you would qualify, because all that time that you spend coding in school and taking my course, like doing your homework assignments, that counts as coding. So don't panic and don't think that you're not eligible or you don't qualify to take the exam, because you do. And a lot of people ask that, but I'm telling you, You have to read it really carefully, and it will. And anything that you do will count towards. Anything you do in healthcare will count towards qualifying for the exam. So don't panic about that. Like don't that that's not anything to be concerned about. What you want to focus on is learning as I will tell everybody, coding always comes down to guidelines. You have to master that coding those coding guidelines. And I'm going to do another video, not right now, but I'm going to do another video because I have also figured out, I've done some thinking, and I figured out that there are six chapters, because the ICD-10 code book has ICD-10 CM code book has, I believe it's 20 or 21 chapters. There are only 6 chapters that you have to know. And when I say have to know like the back of your hand, because they comprise the majority of medical encounters. And if you have those 6 chapters down, you will be able to breeze through any credential. And I will say, for if you want to get your HCS-D, then they have 7 chapters, because they go very heavy into aftercare codes, which nobody else does. So aftercare codes or Z codes, they're in a whole separate chapter that's not part of the 6. So for them, it will be 7. Well, I'll say 6.5, because you really just have to know Z codes, like aftercare codes, because you'll learn other Z codes in other chapters. And we do cover Z codes in my course, but we don't go into aftercare codes, because aftercare codes are not on any outpatient exams, because they don't really deal with aftercare codes. So once again, for outpatient coding and even inpatient coding, there are 6 core chapters you need to know. For home health coding, there are 7 core chapters that you have to know in order to successfully complete their exam. So once again, I'm going to have my information in the description box. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Please feel free to visit my website, and stay tuned for the next video. Oh, and like this video, subscribe to my channel, and please share it with anybody that you think could use the information. And until next time, take care.